Hi, everyone. This is Aaron Larson, executive editor of Power Magazine, and you're listening to the Power Podcast. On today's episode, I'm joined by David Naylor. David is the president and CEO of Rayburn Electric Cooperative. So thank you for coming on the podcast with me. And please tell a little bit about yourself and about Rayburn Electric Cooperative.
Yeah, thanks, Aaron. I appreciate the invite. I'm a recovering engineer by trade. That was what my degree was in. But I started out at college as a consultant. I was there for 16 years, managing, managing consultant. Primarily worked with other generation and transmission cooperatives like Rayburn across the United States. And Rayburn was a client of mine, and they gave me an offer I couldn't refuse. So about 15 years ago, I came on board as executive vice president and then took over as the president CEO in 2017. So it's kind of hard to believe. Makes me feel older than I think I am, as far as having been in the space for about 30 years. So time flies when you're having fun, right?
It sure does.
So Rayburn is like I mentioned, it's a generation transmission cooperative, which as far as a cooperative is concerned, means we're owned by our members. We're a not-for-profit organization. And so from that standpoint, that means we do not have investors, do not have stockholders. The people who buy their power from us is who also owns us. And so that's kind of a unique model to the industry, but it's something that's been around since the 1940s. As a generation and transmission, or G&T cooperative, we handle the wholesale side of things. So we handle generation, handle power plants, obtaining the resources, power supply, whatever that needs as far as getting the source. And then we have the transmission, so we deliver it to our 4 distribution cooperative members, who ultimately then take it and serve the retail consumer at the end of the line. We're 16 counties east and north of the Dallas Metroplex, roughly 625,000 Texans, who Rayburn and our members serve collectively. It's a very fast growing space, and certainly has been a lot of fun these last few years.
Looking back, the main reason I wanted to have you on the program is because we're coming up on the 5-year anniversary of Winter Storm Uri, which really hit Texas hard. And I wanted to get a feeling for what has happened since then. And when you look back at that event, what stands out to you, both personally and from a perspective at Rayburn and serving your customers?
Well, personally, it's amazing how a 5-day period can impact and have such a fallout for so many years after the event occurred. I mean, Winter Storm Uri was 5 days, or at least a solid year. That was all I did. And a lot of things that we've done since are because of Winter Storm Uri. So if I look pre-Uri and post-Uri at photos of me, I have a lot more gray hair now than I did then.
I'm sure.
From Rayburn's standpoint, Uri is one of those events that really took us to the edge. And we really had to do a lot of self-evaluation, and it became a real pivot point for Rayburn. And when I say that, Winter Storm Uri, we incurred 3 years of power cost in that 5-day period.
That's incredible to think about. If my electric bill came and it was 3 years worth of power on my bill, I know I would freak out. I don't know what I would do to pay that bill. So continue your story. I'd love to hear what thoughts went through your mind when that happened.
Yeah, well, some of them, some of those I can say now, some of them are not worthy of or ability to put in print or being said. But you know, Aaron, what you said is exactly right, and was the exact concern that we had. Is while we can pass those costs on to our members and to those consumers, we're putting those people in a situation that some of them can pay, but most of them are going to not be able to, and it's just untenable for those folks. And so for us, we ended up taking a different approach. We there were a lot of options on the table. We Bankruptcy was certainly one of them. Not one we wanted, and we're thankful we didn't have to do that. But ultimately, we were able to come up with a solution where we were able to pay everything that we owed. And then the other thing we did is, we really took a hard look in the mirror and said, what are some lessons learned? What do we need to do differently? And we really made some strategic decisions that ultimately shifted our entire operation standpoint as far as power supply is concerned, going from a minimal owned resources to now we acquired a resource and are building new ones.
Yeah, and I think from what I understand, within 2 years of that storm, you actually purchased the Panda Sherman power plant, which is a 758 megawatt natural gas fired facility. What led you to make that move, and why did you purchase that particular plant, and who did you have to speak to or get into a room to make that decision?
So coming out of Uri, when we looked at the people were who benefited from Uri, or at least came out of Uri in a solid situation, we've recognized that it was the people who owned generation assets. And I guess I should probably add, they owned and those units ran. So we started looking at building generation within our territory. And as we were doing that analysis, we became aware that this Panda Sherman plant was going up for auction. And so we pivoted to looking at it. As far as some of the benefits of it, it's actually just outside of our territory. So it made a lot of sense from a local standpoint, and certainly a regional standpoint. Since it was close to us, and then it performed great during Winter Storm Uri, so that was some other benefits that we saw. It had room for additional capacity if we wanted to add in the future, and it just really checked a lot of boxes for us. At the time, the only downside that we had to it, I guess, was really two things, Aaron. One was it was more megawatts than what we had anticipated doing, and then two, it was going to push our balance sheet. I mean, it's basically going to double our balance sheet, and so we just had to work through those issues. So, when it came down to talking through it, we had a lot of discussions with our board of directors and their respective board of directors. We talked to lenders. We'd assembled a great team of advisors to help us with it as well. And so we worked through all the issues that we thought, and we ended up going through the auction process, and Rayburn was awarded the auction over several private equity companies. And for somebody that was staring bankruptcy in the face a couple of years earlier from Winter Storm Uri, we thought that was a tremendous success for us, and a real testament to the changes and things we had put in place as a result of surviving Uri.
And I'm sure there's a lot of reasons that owners do different things. Can you share any reasons why the previous owners wanted to get rid of the Panda Sherman station?
So my understanding is that Panda, their standard business practice was to build the power plants and then flip them. So this was just a normal process for them. I know they were winding up the fund that they had, so they had three power plants in Texas. All of them were up for sale. The other two were in a different location in the state that didn't make sense to us, but this would be essentially in our backyard. It just made a lot of sense for us. But that's my understanding is they were looking to sell these plants just as a matter of business practice.
And now, as you alluded to, I believe you're getting ready to build a second gas plant. So can you talk a little bit about that and what went into that decision and how the project is progressing at this point?
Yeah. So as I mentioned, one of our concerns with the Rayburn Energy Station when we acquired it was the size. We were concerned that our load we would not grow into that plant until 2030 or something after that. And in our territory, we have a lot of growth. I mean, we're projecting a 25% growth over the next 10 years. And that's not counting any type of data centers or large loads. That's just normal organic growth that we have on the system. So we grew into the Rayburn Energy Station a lot faster than we anticipated, and so we started looking at additional needs. And again, when we bought the Rayburn Energy Station, one of the things that was really attractive about that plant is it also had room for expansion. And so we started looking, doing more analysis, and ultimately decided, hey, let's pursue this power plant. The city of Sherman has been great to work with, both on res and also the res two. And so it's just as we look to how can we best serve our members, and especially as we have additional extreme weather events, it just started checking a lot of boxes that let's add a new resource there, and that's what we're doing as far as the progress is concerned. I mean, we've got the turbines and transformers already under contract. Those will be delivered here later this year and into next year. We're working with the state of Texas on the Texas Energy Fund for some of the financing, and that's been a great benefit as well. And so we're ultimately looking for a commercial start date of June of 2028 for this new what we're calling Res 2.
And it sounds like you kind of beat the rush, because right now there are a lot of people that are having trouble, purchasing a turbine. They're having to wait, 4 or 5 years out. Did you guys get in before that big backlog showed up, or how did that work out?
Yeah, we did. We got our turbines and the transformers under contract late 2024. And in talking to the supplier, they said if y'all been about a couple months later, costs would have been significantly higher, and you're probably another 3 to 4 years later in terms of delivery. So we're really fortuitous in our timing on that.
And from what I understand, there are even, you mentioned data centers. There are a couple of data centers being built in your general location there. How is that going to affect the plant and potentially further industrial growth in that area?
Yeah, Texas Instruments and Global Wafers, they're building some facilities there. Actually, I think the Texas Instrument plant has now gone operational, and they're making chips for these data centers and what have you. But it definitely, from a power plant standpoint, having that load close to the generation, it really helps the reliability. Those type of factors are very energy intensive, so having that dispatchable generation right there is it really is a tremendous benefit to them. It also helps us ensure that the plants run the way they want to.
And you mentioned the Texas Energy Fund. Can you talk a little bit more about that? From what I understand, it's something that Texas created after the storm, and it's providing some low interest loans and grants. How is that factored into some of your decisions and what you've done?
Yeah, so after Winter Storm Uri, the Texas legislature really wanted to try to incentivize additional dispatchable generation on the system. And so they created this fund. It's $10 billion of low cost loans. And so as we were doing our due diligence, I mean, again, we're as a not for profit organization, we're trying to maximize the value of our members' money. And so as we were looking at it, it made a lot of sense for us to try to participate in that process. I think there were over 125 applicants initially for that Texas Energy Fund. There were only 17 that were selected out of that 125 to take the next stage, and Rayburn was is one of those, and we're the only cooperative that's in that.
Mm.
We're working diligently with the Public Utility Commission of Texas, who is overseeing the TEF administration and their advisors. And it's been a great process, and it certainly helps to make the construction of Res 2 a lot more attractive for us and our members, ultimately the consumers at the end of the line who are paying for it.
And I understand you also had worked with lawmakers to ensure that electric cooperatives had the same opportunities to participate. Can you talk a little bit more about that and why that was important to you?
Yeah, the original statute was written more from a independent power producer or investor-owned utility standpoint, where you would have financing specific for the project, and they would bring their own equity. The cooperatives are structured differently. We're heavily debt financed. Yet we have no investors. It's our members who come to the table, and so equity for a cooperative is a different animal that a investor-owned utility. We can't just say we're going to go raise $30 million of cash. The only way we can do that is if we essentially charge our members for additional 30 million, and you don't want to do that.
Mhm.
So it was one of those where we just had to work with the legislature and educate them on how co-op financing works, make sure they understood why this was important, and fortunately they recognized the issue and decided they really did want to make this available to all types of participants, not just those who have outside investors. And so it allowed us to really take advantage of the Texas Energy Fund while really maintaining the model that cooperatives were set up on.
And you talked a lot about how much growth has been in your area or your territory. I want to go back on that a little bit. And from what I understand, you've grown almost double over the past 5 years since the storm. What have you learned about managing risk and other company assets or cooperative assets as you've been going through this rapid growth?
Well, I mean, one of the things that you learn is it's never dull around here. And so, I think, I mean, Aaron, you hit the nail on the head. It's really a question of how do we approach risk and how do we handle risk. Prior to Winter Storm Uri, some of the things that we had anticipated were really not a big issue. I mean, for example, Winter Storm Uri is been called a 1 in 100 year event. And prior to Winter Storm Uri, most people would have just said, "Yeah, we're not really worried about that. That's an extreme event, and it's not likely to happen." Winter Storm Uri really drove home that those extreme events are very real and have a very real impact. And so as we fast forward, we started looking at risk. We looked at risk from the resource standpoint, and that's why we bought Res and while we're building Res 2. We also looked as far as our transmission system and how we manage that. And we looked and said, hey, we need to increase some additional both manpower as well as equipment. And so, we brought in some, like, for example, a tracked bucket truck that allows us to get back into areas that normal tires are just going to get stuck. We invested in additional people here at the cooperative as far as bringing in expertise on the power supply and how do we what are some other things we could do to mitigate that risk. And so we really took a hard look at what is our risk, make sure we understood what our risk profile was and what our risk tolerance was, and then work to align those.
And your workforce, you mentioned, and some of the grid upgrades. Can you go into that a little bit more? Like, how has your workforce expanded over this last 5 years, and what sort of grid upgrades are most important to you? Is it actual lines, or are you talking, distribution centers, or something else that's being so important here?
Yeah, so As far as the equipment is concerned, we've really increased our fleet, if you will. So we've added a heavy duty crane. We've added a mobile substation that allows us to perform maintenance as proactive maintenance, as well as have things basically keep the lights on. So we really need to be able to increase the equipment that we have, so we're not dependent upon third party contractors and equipment they may have. We need equipment that allows us to get back into our system. I mean, most cooperatives, Rayburn no exception, are rural in nature, and so we're not going down city streets to that are paved to get to where we have our facilities. So you have to be able to maintain that. The other side of things that we did is our personnel. Winter Storm Uri, we had roughly 75 employees. Today, we've got over 100 employees. So we've added a lot of that. We've really invested in our linemen, bringing additional linemen in. One of the things that we've done is we actually created an apprentice program, and so we brought in apprentices. Some of them are straight out of high school that wanted to get into the power space. So we've created a program for that allows them to come on at Rayburn as an intern, and then we've hired three of them. Basically, it's about half of them that allow us to train them and develop them into journeyman linemen. So, we're trying to take the approach that hey, we're trying to take care of the here and now as well as the future. And I guess the other couple of things is we also go back and evaluate our system. Do we need to upgrade any of the poles? Make sure our pole inspection process is good. Either replace them or make the repairs. We also look at lines as far as do we need a reconductor? Are there upgrades that we need to do? I mean, while we're focused on Winter Storm Uri, we're also very mindful of other extreme weather and potential, wildfires and that risk mitigation that we need to account for as well.
Mm-hmm. And I don't know if you have any information that you can share about this, but I'm curious what other utilities and particularly cooperatives might have done in Texas following Uri. Did they have similar light bulbs go off in their head where, hey, we need to get some generation, we need to be more prepared for what potentially could happen again, or have any of them gone out of business? Has that been a big problem, or have the Texas programs kind of helped support the whole industry?
Well, there is a saying that if you've met one co-op, you've met one co-op. Uh, so, so we're all a little unique, but by the same token, we all try to help each other out. It where some year definitely shifted and changed the co-op space and in Texas, the largest GNT in Texas. They actually ended up filing bankruptcy, and as part of their private buyout process or to get out of bankruptcy, they ended up becoming a transmission only cooperative. So they had to divest themselves of their power plants, and so that was certainly a game changer for from that standpoint. I think we all have different approaches, even though we're in the same business. But we definitely, I mean, I can tell you that the managers are talking to each other, trying to help each other out where we can and lessons learned. And, I think, one of the things that Rayburn tried to do to help facilitate is on this legislation for the Texas Energy Fund. That change to allow Rayburn to take advantage of it will apply to any cooperative that wants to go after that type of funding as well. So that was a great way for us to help our fellow cooperatives out.
And I guess another question that comes to mind, I know you're working on another gas plant. How does Rayburn envision renewables? Are you doing wind? Are you doing solar? Or is there others opportunities where you're trying to get other types of generation?
So we do have some solar in our mix. We actually there's a solar project that's in our territory. We obtain all the power from it. So we don't own it, but we purchase the output. We've got another solar project that is supposed to come online here in another couple of years that will obtain the output of it as well. So those are certainly things that we look at and evaluate. I will tell you, wind is a little bit of a hard fit for us. Aaron, we're 90% residential, and most of the wind in West Texas is blowing at night where we don't need that power. So
Mm.
wind has not been a very good fit for us, but solar is a nice fit. But I mean, we're an all of the above type portfolio as far as what makes sense. And then the other one, I mean, hydro was sometimes considered the stepchild of renewables, but Rayburn has had the Denison Dam. We get 60% of the power out of Denison Dam, which is a hydroelectric facility on the Red River, and we've had that since Rayburn was created.
Well, David, it's been really a pleasure talking with you. I guess one last thought here. Do you have any advice that you would give to other leaders that are facing, rapid growth and rising risk that you're seeing today? What would you tell them to help out?
Well, I think Winter Storm Uri pushed us to have to be reactive when it hit, and I think you'd much rather be proactive. So I would suggest don't wait for that next crisis before you have to make some of the hard choices. Look, make sure you understand your risk. The extreme events are very critical. We normally focus in on what's the highest probability that's going to occur, and we really need to be mindful of those extremes. The other thing I would add is, Rayburn, we kind of have a saying about status quo is not company policy. And so don't let the way that you've always done things get in the way of what needs to be done.
Yeah, that's a great philosophy. So again, for listeners, I've been speaking with David Naylor, President and CEO of Rayburn Electric Cooperative. It has been a pleasure having you on the program, and good luck with your new plant and going forward.
Appreciate it, Aaron. Thank you very much.